Welcome to Life Stories. Today, we bring you a tale of family, betrayal, and the fight for what's rightfully yours. It's the story of one sister who has always lived in the shadow of her younger sibling, only to have her engagement ring stolen and used to create the perfect wedding. With emotions running high, a GPS tracker becomes the key to uncovering the truth. What happens when the truth is revealed in the most unexpected way? Stay tuned to discover how one woman takes back what's hers and finally stands up for herself. Don't forget to subscribe to start the story today. The first time I noticed my engagement ring was missing, I was elbow deep in dishwater, standing at the kitchen sink after another tense family dinner. I had just spent the evening watching my younger sister, Savannah, bask in the glow of her new whirlwind romance with Frederick. The announcement of their engagement had swept through the dinner table like a gust of wind. And as usual, everything about her life seemed to dominate the conversation. Even though I had just gotten engaged myself, my moment had already been overshadowed by her arrival in the spotlight. I tried to shake it off. I had always been the responsible one, the steady one, the one who never quite measured up to her in our parents' eyes. But tonight, as I stood there washing dishes, something about the situation felt different. The absence of my engagement ring, the one Shane had given me just 3 weeks ago, was a sharp reminder that I wasn't the one people were excited about, the one they cared for. No one seemed to notice that my ring had gone missing, and as I racked my brain for any memory of where I might have placed it, it hit me. I had put it on the windowsill above the sink before starting the dishes. It had been there, right where I had left it. My heart started racing, and I fumbled with the dish towel in my hands. My mind raced even faster. Could I have misplaced it somehow? No, I was sure of it. The ring was supposed to be there. But as I turned around, scanning the kitchen counter and the sink again, my pulse quickened. It wasn't there. Lucy, honey, are you sure you didn't leave it on the bathroom counter? My mother's voice called from the living room, laced with that familiar dismissiveness that always followed me. She was always quick to assume that I was the one who had made a mistake. You know how forgetful you can be. I bit my lip, frustration boiling up inside me. I wasn't forgetful, Mom. I'm sure it was right here. My voice trembled, but I could feel the heat rising to my face. How could she think I was careless about something so important to me? Maybe you should retrace your steps, she suggested lightly, her tone barely masking her indifference. You know how stressed you can get when you're organizing things. I swallowed hard, the sting of her words piercing my chest. She was right in one sense, when it came to organizing. I was the one who always kept everything in place. But I didn't need her to remind me of that. Not tonight, when everything seemed to be falling apart. Savannah had just walked into the room, her blonde curls bouncing with each step. Her perfect, unbothered smile made my stomach twist in a way I couldn't explain. Oh, don't worry so much. It'll turn up, she said, her voice as carefree as ever. Speaking of rings, she continued, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. Frederick and I were thinking of something vintage for our wedding, maybe sapphires. I stood there, my hand still gripping the edge of the sink, watching her carefully. A wave of cold anger washed over me. There was no way that this was just a coincidence. My ring was gone, and somehow, she was talking about sapphires, as if it was a simple, innocent conversation. How many times had this happened before? How many times had I watched her take things from me, my clothes, my friends, even my first boyfriend? It felt as though there was no boundary between us, that everything in my life had always been hers for the taking. I glanced at her, my jaw tightening. When exactly are you planning this wedding? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, trying not to let my hurt show. Oh, you know, soon, she said with a vague shrug, that same smile never leaving her face. For a moment, I felt a pang of sadness. She had always had everything handed to her on a silver platter. Effortlessly, everything I had worked hard for, everything I had built with my own hands. She had always seemed to take without so much as a second thought. And now, she was taking my moment, too, my engagement, my happiness, and now my ring. It was as if I never existed in her world unless I was a stepping stone, a backdrop to her narrative. I dried my hands, trying to steady myself, but my thoughts were spinning. Actually, that's why I came in here, she continued, her voice turning a little sweeter. Could you help me with some planning? I know you're good at organizing things. I nodded, though the compliment felt hollow in my ears. I could already sense where this was going. She was only asking for my help because it meant I would take care of everything for her. It was the same old game. The one she had played for years. And I had always fallen for it. But not this time. Not with the ring missing. Shane had jokingly suggested putting a GPS tracker in the ring. You know how things tend to disappear around your sister, he'd said with a laugh. I had brushed it off at the time, thinking it was just a paranoid idea. But now, standing in the kitchen with my heart pounding in my chest, I couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, Shane had been right all along. I glanced down at my phone. The text from Shane appeared on the screen. Did you activate the tracker yet? My fingers shook as I typed back a quick response. No, but I will. I stepped away from the sink, my heart racing as I opened the tracking app. A small red dot appeared on the screen, pulsating with each passing second. It was moving steadily away from our parents' house, towards some unknown location. Everything okay? Shane's text came in almost immediately. No, I typed back, swallowing hard. But it will be. As I looked up, Savannah had disappeared from the room. And I knew in that instant that my suspicions were true. She had taken it, and now, the only question that remained was what I was going to do about it. I left the kitchen quickly, my hands still trembling from what I had just discovered. My mind was racing, spinning with 1,000 thoughts I could barely keep up with. I didn't have time to think about the emotional toll Savannah had taken on me over the years. This was bigger. The ring was missing, and I now knew where it was. I could feel a wave of dread building in my chest. Every time I had let her take something from me, whether it was an object, an opportunity, or even my parents' attention, I had always been too afraid to speak up. But not this time. This was different. The ring wasn't just a piece of jewelry, it was a symbol of my future with Shane. A promise that felt too sacred to be stolen. I stepped out onto the porch and texted Shane. I found it. It's at her apartment. A few minutes passed, and then my phone buzzed again. What are you going to do? I stared at the screen for a long time. My breath shallow, my pulse racing. What was I going to do? I couldn't just walk into her apartment and demand it back. This wasn't a simple argument over a borrowed sweater or some misplaced pair of shoes. My engagement ring, the very symbol of my future, was now in Savannah's hands. Altered, reshaped, and, worse, worn as though it had always belonged to her. I texted back, I'll figure it out. Just don't let her know I'm onto her. I stepped back into the house, the weight of my discovery settling like a heavy stone in my stomach. Savannah had left, claiming she had an early meeting the next morning. That was when everything started to come into focus. I realized that this wasn't just about the ring anymore. It was about all the years of my life spent in her shadow. All the moments I had let slip away without saying anything. No more. I was done being the quiet, compliant sister who always let things go. I grabbed my coat, my fingers cold as I zipped it up. I could feel the tightness in my chest, the anxiety building as I made my way to the door. Where are you going? My dad's voice stopped me just as I reached the front door. I need to find my ring, I said, my voice firm but quiet. Lucy, please, my dad said, looking up from his newspaper. Don't start any drama. Your sister's getting married. Can't you just be happy for her? I paused, the sting of his words hitting me harder than I expected. This isn't about Savannah, Dad. Not this time, I said quietly, not bothering to explain further. For once, this was about me, about taking back what was mine. I didn't wait for his response. I couldn't. The urgency of the moment had consumed me, and I needed to leave before I lost my nerve. I didn't care that Savannah had already caused a scene, or that our parents would likely brush it off as me being jealous or dramatic. I had the truth on my side. And soon, everyone would know. The drive was a blur, the red dot on my phone screen guiding me to her apartment. With each passing minute, my determination grew. I wasn't just going to retrieve the ring, I was going to make her realize what she had done. I couldn't let her get away with it, not this time. When I finally pulled into the parking lot, the world around me seemed unnaturally still. My hands were shaking as I got out of the car. But I didn't stop. I couldn't. I knew exactly what I had to do. I approached the building, the familiar weight of her apartment complex sinking in. I had been here many times. Always the dutiful sister. Always offering help and support whenever she needed it. But this time, there would be no offering. This time, I was taking back what was mine. I used the spare key that I knew she kept hidden under a flower pot by the door. Stepping into the silence of her apartment. It looked just like it always did, cluttered with wedding magazines, fabric swatches, and an overwhelming amount of bridal planning material. I couldn't stop myself from taking it all in for a moment. The excessiveness of it all. Before my eyes locked onto the ring box sitting open on her coffee table. I was almost at the table when my phone buzzed again. Patricia's name flashed on the screen. And I quickly picked it up. "You need to see this," she said, her voice tense. "She's at the jewelry store. She's getting it resized." I could feel the weight of her words sinking in. This wasn't just about the ring. This was a deliberate act. Savannah wasn't just wearing my ring, she was making sure it was ready for her wedding. My wedding. I couldn't believe what she was doing. But I knew one thing for sure now, I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I had to confront her. But not yet. Not until I had all the proof. And then, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was from Shane. "Everything okay?" I smiled, my determination hardening. "It will be," I typed back. "Trust me, Shane. It will be." The following days were a blur of restless nights and frantic text exchanges with Shane. As I continued to track the dot on my phone, each ping from the tracker felt like a confirmation of my suspicions. A cruel reminder that Savannah had not only taken my engagement ring but had altered it as well. As though it had always been hers. It was hard to believe how far she would go to take something so precious from me. But the evidence was clear. She had turned my moment into hers. And worse, she had done it with a smile. Pretending like everything was normal. Every day, I watched as the red dot moved from her apartment to her workplace. From her meetings to various jewelry stores. I felt the sting of betrayal deeper with each location. At one point, I saw her visit a high-end jewelry store. And for the first time, I realized how carefully she was planning her deception. She was making sure to erase every trace of the original ring. Perhaps even convincing herself that no one would ever find out. But I had the tracker. I had proof. And it wasn't just about the ring anymore, it was about standing up for myself. About breaking free from the pattern of always being the quiet, compliant one. I wasn't going to let Savannah keep taking from me. Not without consequence. I could feel the weight of all those years. The years I had spent silently stepping aside for her. Watching as she took everything from me. While I quietly put her needs before my own. That evening, Shane and I were sitting together in our apartment. The soft light of the lamp casting shadows across the room. We were both quiet. Watching the movement of the red dot on the screen. It had stopped for the night at Savannah's apartment. But something inside me was stirring. I knew I needed to confront her. But I also knew that this wasn't just about a ring. It was about something much deeper. I had spent my life being overshadowed by her. Letting my identity be defined by the role I played in her life. And now, for the first time, I was reclaiming it. I was finally going to be seen. Shane's voice broke through my thoughts. "What are you going to do?" I smiled faintly, my eyes never leaving the screen. "I'm going to let her think she's won. For now," I said, my voice steady. "After all, revenge is a dish best served at a wedding." Shane looked at me, his face a mix of concern and admiration. He had always been the one to ground me, to help me think through my decisions. But this time, there was no second guessing. This wasn't just about the ring. It was about asserting my right to take up space in my own life. The next few days felt like an eternity. Savannah continued her frantic preparations for her wedding. And I continued to watch from a distance. My phone never far from my hand. But I couldn't shake the feeling that this was building to something bigger. I had all the evidence I needed. But I needed to wait for the right moment to strike. It wasn't long before I realized that Savannah had planned a surprise wedding. Disguised as an engagement party. The shock of it hit me like a punch to the gut. She had been planning this all along. knowing that the family would never question her. The last straw for me was when I received a text from Patricia, who had been helping me keep tabs on Savannah. "She's wedding dress shopping," Patricia said, "and she's wearing your ring." I felt a rush of anger, but it was quickly replaced by a sense of calm clarity. This had gone on long enough. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Not this time. I knew what I had to do. The tracker had guided me every step of the way. And now it was time to confront her with everything I had. I wasn't going to allow my family to be swept up in her lies. And I wasn't going to sit quietly by while she continued to take what wasn't hers. I called my parents, my voice calm but firm. "I need to talk to you about something important," I said, sitting in front of my laptop. "It's about the ring." As the day of Savannah's surprise wedding arrived, I felt a strange calmness settle over me. I had already seen the invitation for the engagement party, the one that was really going to be her wedding. I knew that this moment would define everything, the moment when the truth would finally be revealed. Shane and I arrived at the venue, and I couldn't help but feel a rush of emotions. The ballroom was set up beautifully, with guests milling about, still oblivious to what was about to unfold. I could see my parents in the crowd, their faces showing confusion, their attention on the lavish decorations. I held my head high, the weight of the moment finally feeling lighter. As the ceremony began, I watched Savannah walk down the aisle, radiant in her white dress, my ring gleaming on her finger. The guests were in awe, but inside, I was steeling myself for what was to come. I stood up, phone in hand, connecting it to the venue's presentation system. The tracking app was about to speak the truth. I turned to my parents, looking at them one last time before the world knew everything. "It's my ring," I said loudly, as the screen behind the altar showed the proof, the tracker, the movements, the stolen moments. The room went silent. Savannah's composure cracked, and she tried to deflect. But the truth had already been laid bare. The room buzzed with whispers as I watched the person who had taken so much from me finally face the consequences. For the first time in my life, I felt seen. I wasn't the quiet sister anymore, letting things slip through my fingers. I had fought back, and in that moment, I knew I had reclaimed my life. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more life stories.